Something shifted, and you felt it before you could name it. They're responding faster, initiating more. There's a different quality to the way they reach, like something underneath it is less casual than it used to be, and yet you're not sure, because you've misread this before. Is this real, or is this the same cycle dressed differently? Is the person who made you wait for weeks now the one checking their phone? How do you know, with precision, not hope, when the dynamic has actually flipped? Most people either miss the signs entirely, or they see them and rush toward the opening before they understand what created it. Both responses cost them. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what the 5 signs look like, what each one reveals about the avoidance internal state, and, more importantly, what your response to them should be if you want this shift to hold rather than reverse. If this channel gives you the clarity you keep coming back for, subscribe. Here's what most people misunderstand when they sense the dynamic starting to shift. They think the avoidant changed, that something clicked, that they had a realization, that the version of them you always believed was possible has finally arrived. Sometimes growth is real, but that's not what drives the initial table turn. What drives it is a shift in the relational economy. Every dynamic has an economy, a distribution of emotional investment between two people. For most of the time you were in this, the economy was imbalanced. You invested more. You reached more. You cared about the outcome more visibly. And that imbalance gave the avoidant something their nervous system values above almost everything else: leverage. The quiet, unspoken confidence that the connection would hold without them having to fully show up for it. When you stopped reaching, genuinely stopped, not as a strategy, but as the natural result of redirecting your energy toward your own life, the economy shifted. Your investment dropped. Theirs rose. Not from a moral awakening. From the oldest psychological law there is, we value most what we are at risk of losing. The avoidance attachment system, which is finely tuned to the presence and withdrawal of connection, has registered the change in your investment level, and it has responded the way all human systems respond to the threat of loss. It activated. What you are now seeing, the changed behavior, the new quality of their reach, is not transformation. It is activation. And the difference between those two things determines everything about how you should respond. There are 4 phases that describe how this activation builds, from the first internal flicker to the full table turn. The first is the disruption detection phase. Before any behavioral change in the avoidant is visible to you, something has shifted in their internal processing. Your change registered, not as a dramatic event, as a pattern anomaly. The data stream that was consistent, your predictable availability, your reliable responsiveness, the behavioral indicators that you were still organized around them, has introduced new variables. Externally, nothing may be visible yet. They are still operating in their usual way. Internally, the avoidance attachment system has noted the discrepancy between the model it stored and the current incoming data. You are not behaving the way the stored model predicted, and the brain, which runs on prediction, has flagged the deviation for further processing. The emotional dynamic in this phase is asymmetric. You have already genuinely moved. They are just beginning to notice. The second phase is the probe phase. Having detected the disruption, the avoidance system begins to test it. This is where the first behavioral signs emerge. But they are subtle. A message that is slightly less transactional than usual. A reach that doesn't have a practical justification. A response that arrives faster than it used to. Externally, these can easily look like the normal rhythms of the dynamic. And this is where most people make the first mistake. They see the subtle signs and respond with renewed enthusiasm, restoring enough availability that the probe resolves with the original model intact. Internally, the avoidant is running a quiet assessment. Is the change real? Is the investment genuinely lower? Or is this a temporary fluctuation that will correct itself if I wait or apply light pressure? The probe phase is the avoidance system searching for the floor, for the baseline below which your availability no longer exists. And the only thing that pushes the probe into something more significant is evidence that the floor has genuinely moved. The third phase is the anxiety activation phase. When the probes don't produce the expected result, when your availability genuinely doesn't restore to its previous level, the avoidance system escalates. Externally, this is where the signs become more visible. Initiation increases, the texture of communication changes, there is more effort visible in the reach, and crucially, there is a quality of attention that wasn't present before, a responsiveness to what you share, a follow-up where there used to be none, an interest in your life that feels different from the casual maintenance contact of the old dynamic. Internally, the avoidant is experiencing something they are deeply unfamiliar with in this dynamic, the anxiety of uncertain access. The nervous system that was calibrated to have you secured is now running without that security, and loss aversion, one of the most powerful motivational forces in human psychology, is driving behavior in a way that comfort never did. The emotional dynamic has inverted. The person who made you anxious about whether they would reach is now the person anxious about whether you will. The fourth phase is the table turn completion. This is the phase the video's title refers to, and it is important to understand precisely what it is and what it isn't. The table turn is complete when the avoidance initiation is consistent, genuine, and not dependent on your responsiveness to sustain it. When they reach even when you haven't responded to the last message. When the effort in their communication is sustained over multiple interactions, not just peaked in a single moment of anxiety and then dropped. Externally, the dynamic has a different rhythm. They are now the one holding the uncertainty, the one whose internal state is partially organized around your response. Internally, and this is the most important part, they are facing the experience of genuine wanting, not the performance of pursuit triggered by ego, actual wanting, the felt sense of caring about a specific outcome with a specific person. That experience, for an avoidant, is both rare and uncomfortable. It is the thing their entire attachment system was designed to prevent, and its arrival is the most accurate indicator that what happened between you registered at a depth they weren't prepared for. Now, here are the 5 signs. Read carefully. The first sign is unprompted initiation. That keeps going. This is not one reach after a period of silence. This is a pattern. Multiple contacts initiated by them, not in response to yours, across several days or weeks. The avoidant who is genuinely activated does not simply reach once and retreat. They keep reaching because the anxiety driving the behavior doesn't resolve between contacts. The second sign is elevated response speed. The person who used to make you wait hours or days for a reply is now responding within minutes. Not always, but noticeably, consistently faster than before. Response speed is one of the most honest behavioral signals available because it reflects where you sit in someone's actual hierarchy of attention. Fast responses are not something people easily fake across an extended period. The third sign is qualitative shift in content. Their messages have more substance, more follow-up, more evidence that they retained what you said in the previous exchange and came back to it. Questions about your life that aren't just conversational filler, real curiosity about where you are and what you're building. The avoidant who is performing casual re-engagement doesn't do this. It requires genuine investment to remember and return to detail. The fourth sign is vulnerability in small doses. The avoidant, whose system is organized around maintaining the protective distance of emotional control, begins offering small, unsolicited pieces of their inner world. Not grand declarations, small things, a concern they wouldn't usually share, an admission of something they found difficult, a moment of genuine transparency that doesn't have a strategic function. These small doses of vulnerability are significant precisely because they are rare for the avoidant architecture. They indicate that the need to connect is beginning to override the system's default of self-protection. The fifth sign is sensitivity to your response time. You'll notice it indirectly, a slightly different tone when you've been slower to reply. A follow-up message that arrives when you didn't respond to the first. A question in conversation about whether you're busy, which is really a question about whether you're still as available as they need you to be. The avoidant who has genuinely turned the table is now calibrated to your responses in exactly the way you used to be calibrated to theirs. The anxiety of waiting is now in their hands, and it changes how they communicate whether they intend it to or not. Most people, the moment these signs become clear, collapse the distance immediately. They respond with the warmth and availability of the old dynamic. They allow the relief of being chosen, finally, visibly, to drive their behavior back toward what it was before the shift happened. And in doing so, they restore the original economy. The avoidance anxiety resolves. The system recalibrates. And within weeks, sometimes days, the familiar dynamic is back, slightly adjusted, but structurally the same. The table returned, but then you handed it back. Contrast that with the grounded response. You see the signs clearly. You feel the warmth of them, because the warmth is real, and noticing it honestly is not a weakness. And then you respond from your current position, not from the old one. You are warm, but not suddenly infinitely available. You engage genuinely, but not at the accelerated pace their anxiety is driving. You move at your own rhythm, the rhythm of someone whose life is full and whose investment is now selective. This is not punishment. This is not a game. This is the accurate reflection of who you have actually become, and maintaining it consistently without performance is what determines whether the table turn becomes a permanent shift in the dynamic or a temporary fluctuation that corrects itself. The avoidance system needs sustained evidence that the economy has permanently changed. One exchange where you seem centered won't produce lasting restructuring. Repeated, consistent experience of you as someone who is genuinely no longer organized around their availability, that is what creates durable change. There are 5 psychological principles that allow you to hold this position with integrity through the table turn. The first is called evidence pacing. Do not act on the signs the moment they appear. Observe them across a sustained period before adjusting your behavior. Evidence pacing means you require a pattern, not a moment. One fast response is not the table turn. 10 fast responses across 2 weeks in the context of consistent initiation and qualitative shift in content. That is a pattern worth acknowledging. Pacing your response to evidence rather than to hope protects you from misreading an anxiety spike as a structural shift. The second principle is rhythm ownership. The avoidance anxiety will create pressure toward your response, an urgency in their communication that is implicitly asking you to resolve their discomfort. Rhythm ownership is the practice of maintaining your own communication pace regardless of the urgency in theirs. You respond when it's natural and genuine for you to respond, not faster because they're anxious, not slower to punish, at your own pace, from your own life. This communicates through behavior rather than words that their timeline does not set yours. The third is called warmth without merger. The most common mistake at this phase is allowing the warmth you genuinely feel at being genuinely pursued to dissolve the distinction between your two positions. Warmth without merger means you are fully, authentically warm, present, engaged, real, while maintaining the internal distinction that your life, your sense of self, your emotional stability does not merge with the dynamic. You can care about someone without being organized around them. Both are true simultaneously, and the person on the other side of the table can feel the difference. The fourth principle is investment visibility. Let what you are building in your own life be visible, not as a performance, not as a strategic signal, but as genuine expression of what is actually happening. Your work, your growth, your relationships outside this dynamic. When the avoidant can see, concretely, that your life is full and forward-moving independent of them, it recalibrates their understanding of what access to you actually costs. Investment visibility is not showing off. It is the honest expression of a life that doesn't have a hole in it shaped like them. The fifth is called re-entry framing. If and when you choose to re-engage this dynamic more fully, if the evidence accumulates and the pattern holds and you decide there is something genuinely worth exploring, you enter with explicit internal clarity about what you require, not as an ultimatum, as a settled internal standard that you carry into every exchange. Re-entry framing means you are not re-entering the old dynamic. You are offering access to a new one built on different terms, from a different position in yourself, and you are clear enough about that difference that any reversion to the old pattern is immediately legible and responded to accordingly. Here is what the table turn is actually showing you, not that you won something, not that the dynamic has been solved, but that the position you've been building, the genuine investment in your own life, the authentic recentering on your own values and direction has produced real, measurable change in someone whose system was designed to avoid exactly this kind of recalibration. That is not a small thing. It is evidence that the work you did on yourself had real-world consequences beyond your own internal state. You don't rush toward the opening because someone finally chased. You assess it from the place you've built, steadily, clearly, without the desperation that used to live in the waiting. You don't validate yourself through their pursuit. You use their pursuit as one more data point in your assessment of whether this dynamic is worth your continued investment. You don't mistake activation for transformation. You require sustained evidence of both. And you hold that standard even when the signs feel like everything you were hoping for. The table turn is real, and it matters. But what matters more is who you are when it happens. Self-worth is not confirmed by someone finally choosing to pursue you. It was built in the period when no one was, when you chose your own direction not because it would produce a result, but because it was the right direction. Emotional intelligence is not the ability to recognize when someone wants you back. It is the ability to assess clearly, without the fog of hope or the weight of old hurt, whether what they're offering now is genuinely different from what they offered before. Personal power is not having someone wait for your text. It is being so fully grounded in your own life that whether or not you send it, you are complete. The table turned. Now the question is whether you are the same person who was sitting at it before, or someone new.